Merry Christmas from Crossing Ken. I'm Randy, and I'm going solo today because it is a very, very special day for me personally. Because today we are celebrating all things 1964. That's right, friend. If you were born in that glorious year of 1964, we are celebrating you today. Yes, I know that it's almost Christmas, and we probably should be going ho 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 and Merry Christmas and Jolly Holiday and all of that other kind of stuff. But we thought since this is the last video that we'll have dropped for the year, that I'd go solo and we'd celebrate all things turning 60. I did this year. Perhaps you did as well, friend. Well, again, welcome to the Crossing Ken Garage. I'm Randy, and this is Crossing Ken. Back to all things 1964. Some of the things that happened in 1964. Chronologically, we've done our research thanks to History.com and thanks to a video called 100 Songs Turning 60. And that's what this is all about today, is songs turning 60 in 2024. On with the show. Dr. Strangelove, that great cult classic film, premiered in 1964. The Beatles were it in 1964, and you're going to hear more about them here in a minute. But they were in New York and then on Ed Sullivan with a record 73 million people tuning in to the Ed Sullivan Show for that time. Imagine what televisions were like 60 years ago. Those of you who weren't around. Anyway, Muhammad Ali knocks out Sonny Liston. Jack Ruby is sentenced for the shooting of Lee Harvey Oswald. Also, Sidney Poitier wins the Best Actor Oscar for Lilies of the Field. He was the first black actor to win that award in 1964. Mustang debuts. Wow, what a great year. It debuts at the World Fair on April 17th in 1964. Louis Armstrong, that great, great trumpet player. Huh, trumpet players rejoice. Louis Armstrong. He beat out the Beatles. That's right. He beat out the Beatles for number one with Hello Dolly. I'm only reading what we wrote here, folks. Check out history.com. May 9th of that year in 1964, Louis Armstrong beat out the Beatles for number one. Lyndon Johnson signs the Civil Rights Act that year. Ranger 7 takes close ups of the moon. We hadn't landed yet. That's to come soon. And alas and alack, you know our proclivity for all things James Bond. Ian Fleming, the man, dies in 1964 on August the 12th. The Beatles kick off a United States tour at the Cow Palace in San Francisco on August 19th of 64. And, wonder of all wonders, Pop-Tarts were invented and debuted. Breakfast of Champions, September 14th of 1964. The Warren Commission on the JFK assassination officially comes public in September of that year, and Martin Luther King Jr. wins the Nobel Peace Prize. Finally, Sam Cooke dies that year under some suspicious circumstances. Go check out the internetosphere for all of those things. And again, check with our friends at history.com for a complete listing of the things that hit in 1964. Those were just the things that I was sort of familiar with. Perhaps you were too. But again, go check that out. It's a great resource. And they've even got a thing called On This Day in History, so you can check out the times when you were born. But now, why we're here. Songs that turn 60 in 2024. As we get started, I have to take just one moment for my friends at Emerald City Council and let you know what I think the album of the year for 2024 was. Brand spanking new record, debut by this incredible band. A friend of mine is one of the band members. Emerald City Council. If you like progressive rock of Genesis, yes, Asia, um, some of those bands from the 60s, 70s. Again, progressive rock. It's a niche sort of market. Go check out Emerald City Council. They are in top 20s, top 30s for every prog list known to mankind for this year. Emerald City Council. Here we go. 25 of again, straight from the list of the video, 100 songs. Now, this video in 10 minutes and 30 something seconds gives you 100 songs. So Go check that out. Some of them I was like, what? Who is this? And what this video did is it took how they came out on the charts chronologically for the year. So we are going to tell you our favorites off of that list. 25 of those favorites. And I think you'll have realize that some of these songs, still some of them being played on the radio. Classic rock, yes. Sometimes the all your favorites rock and roll stations, but certainly they're still getting airplay. And many of them have been used in movies, TV shows, commercials, even. So on with the countdown, as our friend Casey would say. Do wah diddy diddy. That's right. Man for Man was #1 in October of that year. Hard Day's Night by the Beatles came out in 1964, hit #1 in August of that year. You Really Got Me. Now, we've got a trend coming up here. You Really Got Me by the Kinks. #7, covered by Van Halen on Van Halen. And that's something else about some of these songs turning 60. They had some pretty decent covers. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, I said it. That's right. Decent covers. Never as good as the original. But a lot of these songs, the reason we still remember them today is the bands go back and recreate in their own image, so to speak, some of these songs. Van Halen did it phenomenally with You Really Got Me by the Kinks. That's how I knew about them first, was the Van Halen version off of Van Halen. Dancing on the Streets by Martha and the Vandellas. It hit #2 behind Do Wah Diddy Diddy, and it's been covered. Again, covers are just incredibly important in keeping these classic songs viable and in people's ears, so to speak. Dancing in the Streets, covered by Mick Jagger and David Bowie, but it was also covered by the Kinks, Mamas and the Papas, the Grateful Dead, and Van Halen again. Seeing a trend. Van Halen liked to do a lot of covers, especially in their early years. Oh Pretty Woman by Roy Orbison, of course, covered by Van Halen as well. And it hit #1 for 3 weeks in 1964. And you again know our proclivity for James Bond. All things Bond around the Crossing King garage. Goldfinger hit with Shirley Bassey. Topped out at #8, and it's the only top 40 song for Shirley Bassey, this great songstress of all the James Bond films. It is also listed in the AFI Top 100 Years 100 Songs list at #53. Pretty impressive. Way to go, Miss Bassey. The Rolling Stones. Obviously, they didn't hit as hard as the Beatles did originally. They had their own stuff because they stayed together, obviously. But they came out with Time is on My Side. Time on My Side by the Rolling Stones is a cover by Irma Thomas. Again, I think it's a better, this one is one of the exceptions to the rules. It is a better cover than the original. Very few. Mark it down. You heard it here in December of 2024 that Randy said there's a cover that's better than the original. It won't happen often. Okay. And on the B side, it hit #6 for the Stones. Okay. Next up, Come See About Me. What list of 60s music, regardless of what year, would be complete without Diana Ross and the Supremes? I confess, Diana Ross is not one of my favorite songstresses, but when combined with the Supremes, there's just a magic there. Just an incredible magic. This hit #1 in December of 64. It hit #1 January of 65, and it beat out the Beatles. I Feel Fine. Also, that came out in 64. Next, one of my all-time favorite songs. As a kid, I can remember this. There was a group of songs, Dionne Warwick, the Carpenters. I mean, just a lot of stuff. Mom and Dad didn't really listen to a lot of rock and roll, but when they did, I latched onto it for some reason. Petula Clark's Downtown continues to be one of my favorite all-time songs, and it came out in 1964. It hit #1 on the Hot 100 and #2 on the singles chart for Petula Clark. How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You by Marvin Gaye. It peaked at in 19 it was released in 1964 and hit #6 in January of 65. Talk to me, Goose. You've lost that love and feeling. Who wouldn't know the Righteous Brothers, Lost That Lovin' Feeling. It came out in 64. Top Gun obviously revived the song. It went ballistic, or Mach 10, if you will, in the off of the Top Gun soundtrack. Good song. Um, Hit by the Righteous Brothers, released in 64, it hit number one in February of 65, and then came back into the charts, I want to say, off of the Top Gun soundtrack. Again, one of those songs, all of these songs are so good, and there's such a deep, rich heritage of our history in music. 64 was a good year. A good year. Now, again, what list of 60s music would not be complete without the Beach Boys? The Beach Boys had several things that came out in 64. At one point in time, they were putting out an album like every 9 months. That's the creative genius behind the Wilson brothers and their gang of surfer dudes. Fun was the one from 64 that we've highlighted. It peaked at number 5 on the Hot 100. Again, we mentioned Louis Armstrong, trumpet player, brass guy, and he's just Louis Armstrong, affiliated with the um, Bond film On Her Majesty's Secret Service end credits scene. Beautiful song, all the time in the world. But he hit number one with Hello Dolly, and in doing so, he beat out the Beatles. He also won Song of the Year that year in the 7th annual Grammy Awards for Hello Dolly. The Way You Do the Things You Do by the Temptations. They just were on the Macy's Day float at Thanksgiving, and they didn't do the song, but it is one of those great songs. The Temptations came out with The Way You Do the Things You Do in 64. It peaked at number 11, and it was written by Smokey Robinson. Passed away last year, or this year. It hit the top 40 in December of 1964. Again, we've got so many iconic bands that were prevalent in the 60s. Just incredibly. And they lasted, many of them, on into the 70s until disco kind of took over everything for a little while. Thank goodness it's not still huge. They call it dance music now, but it's really just disco a la 2024. Still not really good. But anyway, lots of money being made. My perspective, if you disagree, you're always welcome to disagree in the Crossing King Garage. Let us know in the comments if there's anybody out there putting any kind of good dance music out. I don't think so. Personal opinion. Viva Las Vegas by Elvis Presley, off of the movie of the same title. It was November is when it came out. And Elvis never performed Viva Las Vegas in a live setting. The recorded version is the only way you can get Viva Las Vegas. It peaked at number 24 on the Hot 100. Believe it or not, of all the number ones that Elvis had, he didn't really have anything in 64 that was just topping the charts. We mentioned the Beatles. The Beatles were all over the world in 1964. Their famous US tour happened in 64. Ed Sullivan happened in 64. They put out they were another band putting out about an album every 8 or 9 months, and this was reflected in the charts. Can't Buy Me Love. They had 2 or 3 different songs that came out in 64. Can't Buy Me Love is the single we chose, one of the singles we chose to promote on our singles songs turning 60. They came out April of 64 with that, and it was the biggest jump in the charts from number 27 to number 1 at that time. Huge jump. Debuted at 27, number 1 the next week. So, I mean, it's the Beatles. What more can you say? It moved quickly. It's the 4th number 1 for the Beatles in that year, and at that point, the Beatles held the top 5 spots on the charts. Never done again. Prolific. There's a reason why everybody knows who the Beatles are. Next, Mary Wells with My Guy. Another counter the Temptations. They toured together a lot and everything. My Guy hit in 64 and another song written and produced by Smokey Robinson that went to number 1. There are some, the only instrumental on our list The Girl from Ipanema came out that year. It didn't make my list because I was like, I'm not sure everybody would. It's an iconic song. Please don't get me wrong. Love the song. Didn't really know much about it as far as its name, but you know the melody once you start hearing it. I mean, everybody knows the song, but they may or may not know what the title is or who did it. Well, we have picked better, I think, of the two movie type instrumental songs. And it's still iconic today. The theme from the Pink Panther. Yep, I love it. Absolutely love it. And I was raised on the cartoon far, far, far before I saw any of the movies with Peter Sellers or even the remakes with Steve Martin. I knew the theme song from the cartoon that we always saw. The Pink Panther was so cool. Always so, so cool. And the theme came out in 64 by the great Henry Mancini. It hit the top 10 and won 3 Grammys that year. Um, it was nominated for Song of the Year, but lost out to Mary Poppins. The entire soundtrack for the Pink Panther was nominated for best original score, the best original score Oscar, but it lost out to Mary Poppins. Dionne Warwick, like we mentioned, she was a staple at this time. 60 songs turning, well, songs turning 60. Dionne is all over this list. She had two or three, but the song we picked was Walk On by Dionne Warwick. It was written by Burt Bacharach and Hal David, that incredible songwriting team. They partnered with Dionne and just made hit after hit after hit. I own the Burt Bacharach box set on CD, and Dionne is at least a quarter of this. Love, love, love the lady's voice. She's just, she's iconic for those of us who were born in 64. Her songs were hitting late 60s, early 70s when we were kids, and so she was all over the radio at that point in time. Walk On by Dionne Warwick peaked at number 6, and it was 51 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Songs list. Well deserved. If you've never checked out that list, I think they update it every 8 or 9 years. Rolling Stone puts out a 500 Greatest Songs of All Time list. Go back. Now, there's a lot of modern songs that are on it too, but just like this song, Walk On by Dionne Warwick, there's a lot of really good songs on it as well, many of which turned 60 this year. Chapel of Love by the Dixie Cups. This thing has been used time and time again in movies, and it spent 3 weeks at number 1, knocking out the Beatles in June of that year. Interesting. Yes, the Beatles were, they got replaced by somebody, so it just as well be the Dixie Cups. The second title of the Beach Boys, I Get Around, Round, Round, Get Around, I Get Around. It hit number 1 on the Hot 100. And it kind of stimulated that unofficial rivalry. Brian Wilson and Paul McCartney, John Lennon, and uh, um, Ringo and George never would validate this, but it kind of stimulated that unofficial Beach Boys Beatles rivalry. Round, round, get around. I get around. Did for them topping on the charts around this time. It came out in 64 and turned 60 this year. The next song on our Songs Turning 60 list is a favorite of mine. It's Wishin' and Hopin' by Dusty Springfield. It is a cover of a Dionne Warwick song. But Dionne's song it peaked out at number 62. For some reason, it just didn't resonate like some of the other songs. Dusty picked it up and took it all the way to number 6 on the Hot 100. Wishing and Hoping, turning 60 this year. The next song is iconic. I mean, it really defines this entire list, if you will, for a generation, because it's been used time and time and time and time again for TV, for movies, for just anything that needs a minor type song to come in. It's House of the Rising Sun, and the version that I've chosen is the Animals. It's a cover, and it is my opinion again one of those covers that really beats the originals. It came out. It actually dates back to a 17th century folk song, and the Animals took it to number 1 in the Hot 100. And you may not know this, but the great hymn of the faith, Amazing Grace, can be sung. The lyrics can be sung to the melody of House of the Rising Sun. Try it. You will be amazed. Came out in 1964. We put this one on the list because here at Crossing Ken, we revere Dean Martin. He had a 007 knockoff set of films called Matt Helm, and you should go see it. 4 or 5 films. They are so campy. They're hilarious, though. But they're stereotypical Dean Martin. He came out with his theme song Everybody Loves Somebody in 1964. It was written in 1947, but didn't get recorded by Dean until 1964, and it hit the, believe it or not, hit the top 100, number one, beating out A Hard Day's Night by the Beatles. Go check out Dean Martin if you've never ever listened to his stuff. So, the last song on our list of songs turning 60. Please, again, go check that video on YouTube, 100 songs turning 60. We've only highlighted 25 on this list, but our last pick is Under the Boardwalk by the Drifters. Again, another one of those iconic songs that's been covered by the likes of Bruce Willis and covered by a whole lot of other folks. It hit number 4 on the Hot 100 of August, and then it was number 487 on the pre-mentioned Rolling Stones list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. There you have it. That's my list of 25 songs that turned 60. Were you surprised that some of these songs were 60 years old? Quite honestly, I'm surprised I'm turning 60 years old this year, or did turn 60 this year. So, those of you who did, don't act like we're from 1964. Let's act like we're from still living in the 80s. I mean, grow up, certainly. Take your responsibility, but never grow old. There's no reason for that. We were the greatest generation ever. We have seen things that nobody before us would ever have imagined, and nobody since would realize that they came about in our decades. So, celebrate everything turning 60 this year. We will see you in 2025. We hope that you have the greatest Christmas ever. And from the Crossing Ken family, we want to wish you a happy new year. Have a great, great holiday season. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year from Crossing Ken. That's all we got. Later.